في الأرضين صاحب العصر والزمان إمام المهدي عجل الله تعالى فرجه الشريف. Respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, tonight is a night of happiness, gratitude and celebration. Eid al Adha reminds us of the incredible faith of Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam and the submission of Prophet Ismail alayhi salam, and the lessons that when we put our trust in Allah, He never abandoned us. Qala Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, the days of Eid are days of eating, drinking and remembering Allah. So tonight, while we celebrate with our families and friends, we also remember the one who blessed us with these moments and gave us the opportunity to gather together as one community. To begin our program, we invite Brother Jawad to recite verses from the Holy Quran. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والمرسلات عرفا فالعاصفات عصفا والناشرات نشرا فالفارقات فرقا فالملقيات ذكرا عذرا أو نذرا إنما توعدون لواقع فإذا النجوم طمست وإذا السماء فرجت وإذا الجبال نصفت وإذا الرسل أقتت لأي يوم أجلت ليوم الفصل وما أدراك ما يوم الفصل ويل يومئذ للمكذبين ألم نهلك الأولين ثم نتبعهم الآخرين كذلك نفعل بالمجرمين ويل يومئذ للمكذبين ألم نخلقكم من ماء مهين فجعلناه في قرار مكين إلى قدر معلوم فقدرنا فنعم القادرون ويل يومئذ للمكذبين ألم نجعل الأرض كفاتا أحياء وأمواتا وجعلنا فيها رواسي شامخات وأسقيناكم ماء فراتا ويل يومئذ للمكذبين انطلقوا إلى ما كنتم به تكذبون انطلقوا إلى ظل ذي 3 شعب لا ظليل ولا غيظ من اللهب إنها ترمي بشرا كالقصر كأنه جمالة صفر ويل يومئذ للمكذبين هذا يوم لا ينطقون ولا يؤذن لهم فيعتذرون ويل يومئذ للمكذبين هذا يوم الفصل جمعناكم والأولين فإن كان لكم كيد فكيدون ويل يومئذ للمكذبين إن المتقين في ظلال وعيون وفواكه مما يشتهون كلوا واشربوا هنيئا بما كنتم تعملون إن كذلك نجزي المحسنين ويل يومئذ للمكذبين كلوا وتمتعوا قليلا إنكم مجرمون ويل يومئذ للمكذبين وإذا قيل لهم اركعوا لا يركعون ويل يومئذ للمكذبين فبأي حديث بعده يؤمنون صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
Ahsan, Brother Jawad, for that beautiful recitation of the Holy Quran. Please, for the well-being of himself and his family, Allah salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Brothers and sisters, before we continue, just a few announcements and reminders of our weekly program going on here at IHIC. Inshallah, every Monday we have a family reading time upstairs in the library. Every Tuesday we have advanced Quran memorization and recitation. Every Wednesday we have a class to learn how to read Quran for beginners, followed by Farsi lessons. And every Thursday we have Latmi and Majalis class, followed by Tafsir of the Holy Quran and Dua Qumaid. And every Friday evening during the program we have youth boys and girls classes upstairs. from the age of 4 all the way to high school. So if any of you want to join, it'll be upstairs. We thank everyone who volunteers, attend programs, and supports the center throughout the year. Your efforts help keep this community thriving and help create opportunities for our youth and families to remain connected to Islam and the Ahlul Bayt. Alayhum salatu wassalam. Qala Rasulullah, the most beloved deeds to Allah are those done consistently, even if they are small. Every class attended, every hour volunteered, and every act of support helps build something valuable for our community. As we celebrate Eid and prepare for the blessed month of Muharram, we would also like to remind everyone that sponsorship opportunities for the nights of Muharram are now available. Muharram is a time where community gathers to remember the sacrifice of Imam Hussein alayhi salatu wasalam, learn from the teachings of the Ahlul Bayt, and pass his values on to the next generation. These programs are only possible through the generosity and support of the mu'mineen. Qala Rasulullah, whoever guides others toward goodness will receive a reward similar to the one who performs it. By sponsoring a night or contributing towards the majalis of Muharram, you share in the reward of every person who benefits from those gatherings, every lesson learned, and every heart inspired by the story of Karbala. If you'd like to sponsor a night of Muharram, please speak to one of the organizers after tonight's program. Brothers and sisters, one of the greatest lessons of Eid al Adha is sacrifice. Not only sacrificing an animal, but sacrificing pride, bad habits, anger, and anything that distances us from Allah. قال Imam Ali alayhi salam, the real Eid is for one whose prayers, fasting, and worship have been accepted. As we celebrate tonight, let us also reflect on what we can improve moving forward, what we can sacrifice for Allah this year, and how we can become better servants of Allah, better members of our community, and better followers of Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. And now, brothers and sisters, it is an honor to invite Sheikh Muhammad Mahdi to address us and share some reflections of Eid al Adha and lessons we can take from this blessed occasion. Please welcome me with 3 salawats ala Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad.
يا رب العالمين يا رب العالمين أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بفضل الله بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين. قال الله العظيم في كتابه الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم فلما بلغ معه السعي قال يا بني إني أرى في المنام أني أذبحك فانظر ماذا ترى قال يا أبت افعل ما تؤمر ستجدني إن شاء الله من الصابرين. And when he reached with him the age of exertion, he said, "O my son, indeed I have seen in a dream that I must sacrifice you. See what you think." He said, "O my father, do as you are commanded. You will find me, if Allah wills, of the steadfast." آمنا بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم آمنا بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. One of the biggest mistakes people make with regard to the holy book, the honorable book, the Quran, is they perceive the Quran as a dead historical text. They do not see the life that the Quran has. And the fact that the Quran is perpetual and is applicable at all times. And the parables and the tales, and when shall I say the stories, I should say, that are told in the Quran are in order for us to take as an example and how these are applicable and how they affect our day to day lives. And when a verse was revealed, these verses have a backstory, some a humongous backstory. And these backstories are where we extract these lessons in order to deal with our day to day struggles, our problems. How do we deal with our problems today? Why are we told to recite the Quran? You know, when someone asks me, I want to get married, or I always say, pray in the morning, supplicate, and recite the Quran. Everything's about reciting the Quran. In fact, one person said, I went to visit one of the Maraja, Sheikh Hussein Wahid al Khurasani. He said, I asked him, give me some advice of something that I can do that's good. He said, recite 50 or 100 verses of the Quran and give the reward of these verses to Imam Sahib al-Amr. Everything's linked to the Quran. And when you recite the Quran, you understand what it's about. Firstly, the first lesson we get from the story, because the story of Adha is about what? A sacrifice. You know, everyone talks about the Qurbani before Hajj. Have we got it's good to kill a sheep, it's good for this sacrifice. And the whole story is about the sacrifice. And it's considered to be the greater of the two major Eids for the Muslims. Obviously, our greatest Eid, which is exclusive for the Muwalin, is the day of Ghadir. But for the Muslims in general, their two greatest Eids are Eid al-Fitr, and the greater Eid that they have is Eid al Adha. And this Eid is something that has a story of great significance with many points that we need to observe. Of these points that we need to observe is who is the protagonist in the story and what is their position, because obviously someone that has ma'rifah is someone that can do an action in the most correct way. For example, 2 rak'ats that I perform, what are they in the value of 2 rak'ats that a prophet performs? I could perform 1,000 rak'ats. What are they with the ma'rifah that a prophet of God has when he performs his prayers? Howbeit, if this man, our protagonist, is not only a prophet of God, a Nabi of Allah, and he's not only a Rasul of Allah, a messenger of God, but he is someone who is a dear friend. When we say a dear friend, linguistically, if you want to look at the lexicon, Khalil. When we say Khalil, what does Khalil mean? When we use that word, what is a Khalil? Generally, we have friends we hang out with. We sit in a group, and each friend has good points and bad points. You got the friend that never pays for anything, always just tags along whenever anything's going on. For some reason, back in the old days before the tapping with the phones, I left my wallet in the car was a common. The friend that never prays because he's always nijis. There's always in every group, there's someone that has something, but you never have a friend that has no deficiency. It's very rare. A Khalil is that. A Khalil has no khalal. He has no deficiency. He has no gaps. He is the dearest of friends. Whose friend is he? He is Khalil, Allah. Ibrahim is the friend with no deficiency, that is so near to God that when our masters, Al-A'imma alayhum as-salam, mention any prophet's name, any of the prophets, 123,998. The other two is one is Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, sallallahu ala Muhammad wa alayhi. And the other is Ibrahim. His case is different. The 123,998, they will say, Ala على نبينا وآله وعليه السلام. So they'll say the Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt and this Prophet. So the Messenger of God is mentioned first, except for Ibrahim. Ibrahim, they would say عليه وعلى نبينا وآله. Why did they give him this reverence and respect that was different to every other prophet? Because even God alaykum salam mentions وَإِبْرَاهِيم الَّذِي وَفَّى. Ibrahim was the loyal one to God. He was so loyal that even when, sometimes I'll talk about myself, I'm not going to talk about anyone else. When I have a problem, I look up and go, God, sort this, please, Ya Allah, help this problem. I got this problem, Ya Allah. And I will nag and nag and nag, and you're supposed to. Allah bihib al-hah al-mulahin. But Ibrahim, at the point where he's been flung in the fire, after he's supplicated, he gets flung in the fire, he makes a statement that when Jibreel asks him, because he's made his dua, he's been flung, he says to him, can I help you? Would you like me to help you? He said, Allah will help me. He said, then ask him. And Ibrahim, with ma'rifah, we're not talking about people, yarhamakumullah, bishad. We're not talking about people not understanding the ma'rifah. He says, يَغْنِينِ عَنْ سُؤَالِ عِلْمُهُ بِحَالِ. That suffices. It's sufficient that he knows my plight, he knows my problem, that I don't even need to ask. In other words, what Ibrahim is saying, Allah loves me more than I love myself. Imagine this level of ma'rifah. To honestly reach a level where you truly have this belief. And that's of the reasons he was Khalilullah. He had a ma'rifah of God unlike anyone of the other prophets other than the 14 ma'sumin salawatullahi wa salamu alayhim ajma'in. He was completely self-reliant he was completely reliant on Allah Azza wa Jal in every way. And he was never a burden on anyone. In fact, he was so in love with God, and he was known about his generosity. You have a lot of narrations of where Ibrahim would never eat alone. If he has food and he's about to eat, he would invite someone to eat with him. He would invite someone. His generosity was so great that they claim, now the claim of this claim I've heard, it's validated by the fact it doesn't negate any hadith in its meaning. That he once said that I never hold anything from Allah. I will give everything to Allah. That even if I have a child, I would sacrifice the child to Allah. Now he's making this statement if the hadith is valid. Remember, this is my disclaimer because I couldn't find the source. It's something I heard, but I never found the source. So I won't validate it. Last time I said this, Sheikh Mansour said the next day I made a hadith. The next day he sent me the source. So I'm throwing this out there. Maybe he listens to this and sends me the source, saves me. Because all the websites are not the same as they are right now during the southern state that we're in. So anyway, let's assume that this is valid because there's nothing wrong with this statement. We all have a strong tendency to make grand statements. You know what I mean? Before the fact. Everyone knows how to talk before the fact. Someone before he gets married says, when I get married, this is how I'll run my household. When I'll get married, you've seen those people that aren't parents yet. Why do you think people mock the Pope when he makes a fatwa or a decree, is that the papal decree upon contraception? Mate, you're not even married. You're not entitled to an opinion. So when you give an opinion, you're not entitled to an opinion. You have to be someone that's in the situation. So you get these people that have never been married, they'll see your kid playing with an iPad. If I have a kid, he will never touch this, and they make all these bold statements. Those ones that they just love to make statements all the time before the fact. And we are all experts on other people's lives. You want to know how much we're experts on other people's lives? Go to any social media, YouTube, Facebook, and see what people have to give their opinion on everything. Everyone has opinion on things. Everyone's an armchair expert. We used to talk about the people that used to say, "I'll do this and I'll do that." They make threats from their armchairs, and they throw lines in any way, shape, or form. Now, we judge how we would handle trials. We judge how we would handle problems. But when reality, see, this is something I like to give personal examples. I remember at the time when it was during the Tahrir of Jnub Lebanon in which was recently the celebration for when the withdrawal of the Satanist state. We'll call them Satanists because that's what they are. Inshallah, Jew is their next withdrawal. But that day, I remember at the time, Sayyid Hassan Rahmatullah alayhi had made a statement that no one is allowed to touch even the hair on any of the collaborators' heads. No one's allowed to touch them. So I was at the time 22 years old, and I've got an opinion. An opinion's dangerous, Imagine I had a gun, because with your opinion, you throw it at everything. If you have a gun, you're just shooting at everything. So I said, why is he saying that? They should annihilate them all. You're a kid. You have no idea. 22, you are a kid. I don't care what your body says about you. You're a child. My father at the time said to me, الإيد بالنار مثل الإيد بالماء. He said, the one that has his hand in the fire is not the one that has his hand in the water. You weren't in the south at the time to know whether you would have been with the enemy or not. Don't pass judgment. This was the first lesson. Don't pass judgment. He said, what the Sayyid is saying is very applicable. This is something we pass judgment, and when the reality slaps us in the face, we all sing a different tune. How often you see people say something, and then when, if this person turned up, I would never say hi, I would never take this, I would never take, and when the reality comes, they hit. So, never make any statement generally if you're not ready to back it up. So limit your statements, because eventually it's time to collect. So based on this statement, if we say that this statement was sound, and if it is correct, he was put through this trial. Just to begin with, because we all know the story before I go into it. Nabi Ibrahim was not just asked to lose a child, to natural causes. It's not like God said, listen, we're going to give you a child, and in the final trimester of your wife's pregnancy, because only a woman gets pregnant, we're not pregnant. I hate when people say that. So just a disclaimer I've got to put out there. So when a woman is pregnant in her final trimester, we're going to take this child to miscarry. No, that wasn't the trial. Okay? Nor are we going to take him in the early years. We will take him while he's a man, and you will be the one that takes his life. Imagine that. Just like you have said you will. Using a knife, not just anything. It's not like you're doing something from a computer screen many miles away. Knife. A knife is the most intimate way to kill someone. It's very close. It's very difficult. Not anyone can do it. Something that is of utmost difficulty. Now, we have to also consider, because I need you to understand what kind of a sacrifice is. How old Nabi Ibrahim was when he got Ismail. Because Ismail is his firstborn. Alhamdulillah alladhi wahaba li ala kibar Ismail wa Ishaq. Ala al-kibar. I'm old. How old? He was in his late 90s. And in the penultimate year, I think, before 100. When he had Ismail, and in his hundreds when he had Ishaq. So, he's on the last stretch. And he has Ismail. And he's old. And after this wait, where he waited over 90 years, almost 100 years to have this first child, he raises this child into a man. This child helps him. And a child is received after dua, after crying, after nights kept up. And also, and these are, because remember, a lot of the times when we talk about the prophets and the Imam, we have a problem. We take away the human qualities. Then there's no test. If you have some people, I've seen one guy, he was saying that the Imam never wept in Karbala. This is wrong. What are you talking about? He's not a human being. Go look at the hadith of how the Prophet wept profusely when Hamza was martyred. He wept till his shoulders shook. Go read the hadith. He wept till his shoulders shook from how much he wept over Hamza. Alayhi salam. So the Prophet is not only a prophet of God, he's a human. قُلْ إِنَّمَا أَنَا بَشَرٌ مِثْلُكُمْ. I'm like you. I'm a human. The difference between me and you is yuha ilay. Is the other side, the revelation part. But I'm a human. I get tired. I get sleepy. I get hungry. I get thirsty. I am happy. I am grieved. I become saddened when things happen. So in this case, he's at this old age. And at the old age, have you ever seen when someone gets a child at an old age, it's the first child, they walk around like it's the only child in the universe. You see his kid will kick something, break something. I remember this old guy, his child threw a ball and it hit, those picture frames, and it fell and it broke. And they all ran, and I'm thinking this kid's going to be slaughtered. I was young at the time. But they were elderly parents. They ran, they hugged him and kissed him. They go, Alhamdulillah ala salamtak, you're safe. And I'm going, dear God, I would have been marched to the gallows. This guy's been looked after for breaking this. So this is when you get elderly, you become mellow. You're very tender at this age. And the other thing is when he mentions that he reached the age, if we go back to the verse, then he mentions balaga ma'hu sa'i, that he reached the age of exertion, which means he was able to be a strong support for his father. So they've had years together where the father has become reliant upon this son, that this son assists him. You've got a son becomes like a support with you in this case. So when he reaches this point that he feels like this is the exact age where a father and son companionship becomes very strong. All the years I've put in. I don't want to make this into a majlis azar. But that's next time Muharram comes, you can appreciate what it was like for Imam Hussein to farewell Ali al-Akbar. You can really appreciate that. Age is nastajiru billah wa rabbana. That age is really difficult. So he's been tried with this. Now, it doesn't stop there, because this is your life. This is actually your life. You've made a statement. You've made a claim. God wants to test you. Test you. How do I go with this test? Am I able? Am I fit? Am I able to survive this? And it doesn't just go smoothly. See, there's other things that play a role here. And this is the importance of Hajj. The philosophy of Hajj. And every part, it is so, every year, I went to the Hajj, we would learn a million new things just from research, reading hadith, and listening to lectures. The things you would learn would change your perspective on everything got to do with this event. After all this, the trial continues to what? It doesn't stop there. It's like your life. You get the approach of shaitan, al-la'in. See, shaitan, he doesn't come up. It's like, when people tell me, how does someone, for example, collaborate with the satanic state? I said, how did they just go on, okay, what do you think? The satanic state comes and says, listen, we are your enemy. We want to kill you and come join us. No. I remember one guy that worked with them and turned back. I said, what was the string they used to use you with? He said, they tell me these people are Salafis about the Palestinians. They curse you. They are the ones that support the killers of Ahlul Bayt. They know this stuff and they know how to eat. He said, we want to give you sovereignty over your own land. We're here to help the Lebanese people. This is the methodology they use. Don't think they come in and tell you, listen, I'm shaitan, come stand with me. Shaitan exploits logic and emotion to break what? Your resolve. He sees Ibrahim's determined. They don't come in. That's why we call something a shubha. Why is it a shubha? The word shubha, when people come up to you, I'll give you an example of a shubha. When someone says, can God create a rock that he cannot lift? We call this a shubha because it has a likeness to what? It has a likeness to disproving the qudra al-ilahiyya, that Allah is not all powerful. Because if you say God cannot create a rock that he does not lift, then you're stuck there. And see, this fallacy that they hit you with, which is a question that doesn't make sense. Because his opinion of God is that tall guy with the long white hair, long white beard, that wears the sandals, and he creates rocks, and he's thinking of this guy holding a rock. That's the perception of God when they speak about God. Have you ever noticed when they speak about God, they say the man upstairs, as if he's like Rapunzel locked up in a tower or something. The man upstairs, where is he? Where is this man that's upstairs? This is what they say. Someone once said this to me. How do I respond to this? I said, how tall is a man that weighs 70 kilos? And he said, that's a nonsensical question. Sabah al khair. I haven't given you. It's like if I give you, when you have simultaneous equations, if I give you a single equation and I said to you x plus y equals 245. How many values can x be? How many values can y be? Can this be solved? Of course not. Because the values are infinite. Not infinite, sorry. There is an amount of values that they can be, but none of them are true values. They're all what? They're all guesses on what the value is. So when someone gives you a question, that makes no sense. Does a rock have, for example, it's important to mention this. Does a rock have the ability to exist without being encompassed by God's ability? The rock does not have this ability. So we say, هذا لا يكون. It's not possible for a rock to exist not being within God's ability, because everything is within God's ability. وهو على كل شيء قدير. So what would he say? How is he exploit this? He would come up and say, I know the Christians are going to get upset with this. You know why? Because he would come up and say, listen, and this is what he said to him. You are killing an innocent, sinless soul. And according to Christianity, God did this with his only son. Killed an innocent and sinless soul. So the first thing he said, you are killing a sinless and innocent soul. Another thing, Shaitan came as a person. He didn't come as Shaitan. He came as a man. He came in another form. And he said, who said that the dream, because you saw this in a dream, who says the dream is a hujjah? Who said that the dream's correct? Maybe it's shaitan that's come in the dream and he's deceiving you to do this. You understand what I mean? Starts to plant these thoughts in your head. Another thing, he said, all right, it's not working because he's still running for this. He said, if you do this, you will establish a horrific sunnah, a tradition where people will have to kill their firstborn sons. You know what I mean? He came from every angle. He failed with Ibrahim. So he went to Hajar. He went to the mother of Ismail and this righteous woman, because he failed with the father. So he said, I'll try the mother. I'll see what the mother says. So when he arrives to Hajar, he acts as if he's oblivious to the matter to catch off guard. You know, what's wrong? What's going on? Dear God, is that what's happening? Do you know what I mean? So in that manner, he'll be able to catch her off guard. And then he begins to change the argument, what they call gaslighting now. Change the whole argument on what it is. Firstly, by playing to pretend that Ibrahim must have lost his mind if he's going to kill his son. This is wrong. When have you heard of this? And he approaches in a way, and this story highlights something very important to us. The stealth of shaitan. That although he is aduwwun mubin, he is a manifest enemy, his way is stealthy. You know, sometimes you'll sit there and you watch a video on YouTube and you'll change your whole opinion on something. It'll change your whole opinion because the person that made the video is really good at manipulating. One of the things I used to hate at school was debating. Even though I was in the debating team, I used to hate it. And my English teacher said, why do you hate it? I said, because you are lying. You are lying to win an argument. You are arguing something that they give you the subject. You are arguing something that you do not believe in. But you're able to manipulate people to be that this is a fact because of the way you deliver it. I said, this is so dangerous. And you see this. Have you seen when they get these people that come on recently that scientist that the one from the Satanist state where he said that humans aren't sentient beings, you know, they don't have a right to exist. See, and what he's saying is logical if there's no God. That it should be okay to kill anyone because there is no legislation saying that. He said human rights don't exist. In other words, so what we're doing to the people in our region, what we're doing is okay because there's no one to object to this. So this gives you an idea to know that shaitan doesn't come wearing or holding a warning label. You've already been warned by Allah. He comes with doubts masqueraded in logic and in empathy and in common sense, as they call it. You know, common sense, obviously what you've been learning in school, that this is common sense. You know, like when someone, I think I've gone, I'm on a different angle, different trajectory now. You know, someone comes up to me and says, oh, you know, these plastics. I said, 1,000,000 straws can go into a turtle's nose as far as I'm concerned. There's people being massacred all over the world and you're worried about me having a plastic straw. You know, every time you go into Boost, I don't know how many times I get upset when they give you the cardboard straw. Just something like this is so important. And then people being massacred said, this is what I'm talking about. They masquerade it in logic. This is the way of the shaitan. To make things to be acceptable in this way. So from this story, what do we gather? This sacrifice that was eventually replaced because Ibrahim had made a statement that he'd give anything to God. When God tested him, Ibrahim stood true no matter how much he was trying to be swayed. He was that Iblis tried to sway him. Furthermore, there's a hadith, and this is what I will finish with. عن الفضل ابن شاذان قال سمعت الرضا عليه السلام. There's a hadith. Al-Fadl ibn Shadhan narrates that I heard Imam al-Rida alayhi salam, Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Rida, sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. He says, لما أمر الله عز وجل إبراهيم عليه السلام أن يذبح مكان ابنه إسماعيل الكبش. This is the point he talks about. That when God, I'm not going to read it all in Arabic, I'm just going to explain what it is. That when God, when we first went to Mina, a lot of the times they would tell us tamanna, people would say that Mina was called Mina because Ibrahim tamanna that he doesn't have to kill his son. But this hadith, which is an authentic hadith, its narration is strong, says other than that. See, a lot of the times you hear things that have been adopted from, back then there wasn't YouTube, it's anyone hears street talk and they bring it in. And at the time, when you're young, you listen to anyone talking. You don't sit there and say, I'm going to go ask. Someone asked me today a question about the Yom al-Nafr, from the Hajj. He said, I asked Sheikh Fulan about this. If you ask the Sheikh, why are you asking me? The Sheikh's there. If he's a Sheikh, is he a Sheikh? He said, yes. I said, follow his answer. I said, why are you asking me? What, you think I'm going to give you a different angle on it? It's the last day of Mina. It's the last day of Mina. He was asking a question on that. I said, based on his answer, just, you follow the answer. So anyway, so when God asked Ibrahim, commanded Ibrahim, instead of sacrificing his son, now you got to remember, Ibrahim already had struck with the knife. And Allah, the knife was struck, prevented the knife from what? From cutting. Just like with the shaheed, with the martyr. When Allah mentions in Surah Yasin, just a very important point. See, Allah is the one that chooses how things happen. Allah commands whether it works or not. That the martyr in Surah Yasin, when he says, when it speaks about the man that came from Medina, رَجُلٌ يَسْعَى قَالَ يَا قَوْمِ اتَّبِعُوا الْمُرْسَلِينَ. That one, the one that comes and tells the people of Antioch to follow the Mursaleen. And then when they make the decision to kill the Mursaleen, he stands before them to stop them, and he looks at the messengers and he says to them, Inni amantu bi rabbikum fasma'un. I believe in you, God. Hear what I say. So you testify on the day of judgment, I'm not with these people, I'm with you. Do you know when he said this, they say they had grabbed him and they severed his head. But you know what the hadith says? It said the moment the metal of the sword touched his neck, all he heard was وَقِيلَ ادْخُلِ الْجَنَّةِ قَالَ يَا لَيْتَ قَوْمِي يَعْلَمُونَ. He was told to enter paradise. He never felt that moment. It was gone. The martyr has entered this other world. So Allah has the ability to change the effect. So this knife didn't cut. Whereas according to this hadith, see, this is Ibrahim, is different. Salawatullah wa salam alayhi, is different. He says, and this is what it means. He says that Tamanna, Imam al-Rida alayhi salam says, Tamanna Ibrahim an yakuna قد ذبح ابنه إسماعيل بيده وأنه لم يؤمر بذبح الكبش مكانه. Ibrahim tamanna, he wished that God had allowed him to sacrifice his son instead of the sheep. Not the opposite, as sometimes people say. This is how, it's a long hadith, I'm not going to go through it. I think I've been up here for a while, haven't I, Hajj Ali? Am I right? Do you want me to continue the hadith? I'll continue. It's a beautiful hadith, but it's going to turn into a musibah. That's why I don't want to continue the hadith. The hadith turns into a musibah. That's why I don't want to read it. But Ibrahim alayhi salam wanted to kill his son instead, because that's the word he had given. And he wanted to fulfill that word, the promise he had made. But Allah fadahu bidhabhin adhim. I want to try and... So when he said to him in the hadith that he narrated an al-Imam, he asks him, Hajj, I don't want to, honestly, I don't want to go through the rest of the hadith because it's a Eid. Yani if everyone looks up this hadith, they want to read it, it's nice for Muharram to read. It's not, I'm sorry, I know I've taken you to water and I haven't let you drink, but the thing is that Allah Azza wa Jal saw the willingness of Ibrahim al-Khalil and his love for Allah, and that he would give anything for Allah, that he exchanged his son for the greatest sacrifice of time. That's what وَفَدَيْنَاهُ بِذَبْحٍ عَظِيمٍ. You know, someone reads the Quran, honestly, they think, honestly, if I told you Ismail, the thing that was taken in his stead was a sheep. Think about this. هل الكبش, the kabsh, أعظم من إسماعيل? Is the kabsh greater than Ismail, the sheep? So Allah Azza wa Jal exchanged Ismail for the martyrdom of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam. It's in the hadith, I don't want to go into too much detail. This is a great Eid, and it's a time to supplicate, especially these days as we prepare ourselves for Muharram. One thing I want to give a heads up coming along is the day of Ghadir. It's a day of great reward, especially to feed people on that day. So whoever's able to feed others on this day, of the day of Ghadir, the reward of it is $2 grand. It's humongous. In it, and within it, it's as if you have fed all of the Anbiya. In the hadith, it says, if you have fed the entire prophethood, that has a station that is so high. And in these days coming up are the days for you to supplicate, especially of the plight of the mu'mineen at this time, because this is what supports them. This is what gives them strength. You know, alaykum ad-du'a fa'innahu silahul anbiya. It's the weapon of the prophets. And this is what supports all those that have been steadfast, all those that have been defending their lands. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal on these days, these holy days, that Allah Azza wa Jal changes the plights of the believers. Bihaq Khalil Allah Ibrahim. I ask Allah by His love for Ibrahim and His nearness to Ibrahim on this day for Ibrahim, that Allah changes the plight of the believers around the world, especially with Dhuhur al-Hujjat ibn al-Hasan al-Mahdi. This is the head of it. So we ask Allah to hasten the reappearance of our Master. Even if we have victory tomorrow, we still want our Master. Even if you're living in the best days, we ask Allah to hasten the reappearance of our Master. Al-Hujjat ibn al-Hasan al-Mahdi, arwahuna fida. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم قل لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. وإلى أرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات وإلى أرواح موتانا وموتاكم ولقضاء الحوائج وقبول الأعمال وشفاء المرضى وغفران الذنوب وتعجيل الفرج وحسن العاقبة والنصر من الله وفتح قريب. رحم الله من قرأ سورة المباركة الفاتحة مع الصلوات.
Ahsantum Sheikhna Muhammad Mahdi for those valuable reminders and reflections. Please send a salawat for himself and his family. Ala Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. Brothers and sisters, Qala Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, that the guidance and knowledge Allah has sent with him is like rain that falls upon the land. Some land absorb the rain and produces vegetation and benefit. Some land hold the water so others may benefit from it. And some land neither retains the water nor produces any growth. Tonight we pray that we are among those who not only hear knowledge, but absorb it, benefit from it, and put it into practice. To see how much we're listening, we're going to have a quick quiz based on tonight's lecture. We have prizes for 2 brothers and 2 sisters. So listen carefully and raise your hands if you know the answer, inshallah. Our first question is, what trait was Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam known for? Sister? Sorry? Ahsant. Yeah. Second question, how old was Nabi Ibrahim when he had Nabi Ismail alayhi salam? Ahsan, 2 for the sisters. And the last 2 are for the brothers. Which surah contains the story of Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam's dream to sacrifice his son? Which surah contains the story of Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam's dream to sacrifice his son? We'll change the question. What were the 2 sons of Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam? What were their names? Sisters to anyone. Ahsant. And the third one, what was the miracle in Nabi Ibrahim's life?
Make it easy for the guys.
I'm trying.
Right? Because they're really easy. We have a quiz, we have lucky. Anytime the guys never get the answers right. I'm going to make it easy. Ask them what day is today.
What day is today? Eid. There you go. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. All right. What was the miracle in Nabi Ibrahim's life? Anyone? Fire. Haj Fawzi. That concludes tonight's program. Please enjoy the refreshments and cake outside. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.